Hi, I'm Stan Shelley from Shelley and Son Books in North Carolina. This is the first broadcast on old books, but we hope to do one a week. And we're going to start this week with Oz books, Wizard of Oz books, because we recently made a big purchase of a collection. And John, you might turn around and show them as part of the collection there. The Oz books were real popular in the early 20th century. The first one came out in 1900, and then for the next 30 to 40 years they came out with roughly one a year, and they ended up with I think 40 books in the series that are official books. There's lots of ancillary books. It all started with this one, The Wizard of Oz. This came out November 1st, 1900. It's illustrated by W.W. Denslow because Baum and Denslow had done a book earlier and it was very successful, so they thought they would work together again on this book. So the big question is it a first edition? So let me just talk a minute about how you determine first editions. You just about have to have a reference book for most of the Oz books. This is a very good one, Bibliographia Oziana. I've used it and I like it and it's good. This looks good, but I've never used it. It's Books of Wonder, The Wonderful World of Oz by Books of Wonder, and it looks good. But the Cadillac has this one. This is the one I use, The Book Collector's Guide to L. Frank Baum and Oz. This book has lots of color illustrations. It covers every book in the Oz series. It covers every book that Baum wrote, and it covers all the Oz books that were written by other people after he died. So it's extremely thorough, and lots of times it doesn't just help you with first editions, it helps you with second and third editions. So I really like it. It's a great book. Now, the first book is the most valuable in the series, and it's very easy to know if you've got a first edition. If you look at the spine, if it says George M. Hill, that would be G-O period, M period, Hill Company, C-O for company, then you have a first edition. If it doesn't say that, you don't have a first edition. Not many books are that simple, so that's pretty nice. So that's the indicator that you have a first edition. But things that are not always too simple, the first edition has two variations. The first variation is more valuable than the second variation. And here's the variation. On page 14, at the very top line, in the original book, I've got to catch up with my notes. In the first part of the printing, it says at the top of the page, it says Low Whale On. The people corrected that. That was incorrect. Baum actually wrote Low Whale Of, so they stopped the printing presses, fixed the problem, and then continued on. So the earlier ones have the mistake and the later ones don't have the mistake. The earlier ones are a little more valuable than the later ones, but all first editions have value unless they're just totally falling apart. So let me give you a good general rule. If you're out in a store looking at a book and you see the big color fronts like they have, then your first question is, ooh, I wonder if, somebody's asking $15 for this book. I wonder if it's a first. And so I can tell you one general rule that's real helpful. If the book is from 1934 or earlier, and that's most of them, and if you flip through it and there are no color illustrations, it is not a first edition. If there are color illustrations, it might be a first edition. Here's a copy of Speedy. It's from the before 1935. There's a color picture. There's more. There's a color picture. So we know that this might be a first edition, and it bears further research. So then we would use our research book to find out the other points that determine it's a first edition. And in this case, we found out, yes, indeed, it was a first edition. So that's a good rule to help you. Along the way, you will find times that in the book it says the logo at the bottom of the spine is either boldface or semi-script. What that means is some first editions have this, that's boldface, and some have this, that's semi-script. And some firsts call for one, some firsts call for the other. So that's something that helps along the way. And I just want to mention that some of the stuff gets unbelievably tedious. So let me show you an example. When you're working on the book The Lost King, one way you identify the early editions from later editions is on this page. It's 193. The word back, and you can see that the B at the top of the letter B, you have the little line. It's called a serif, a little line at the top. At the K, there's supposed to be that little line, but it's not. It got damaged during printing. So when you have the little line, you have the earlier copies. When you have the damaged K, you have the later copies. So that's how particular it gets when you're trying to identify editions. Some people find that the details of that interesting. I certainly do. In Oz books, you're always looking for dust jackets, whether you got a first edition or not. Dust jackets are always good, and they're almost always beat up if you have them. The very first book, 1900, had a dust jacket. At that time, dust jackets were pretty rare, but the first book had a dust jacket, and all the books thereafter had dust jackets. I'll give you an example. If you had an Oz book that was worth $50 without the dust jacket, it might be worth $200 with the jacket. So the jackets are just tremendously important. And jackets also, you have to determine if you've got a first edition, because a book can be the first edition for the book, but not first edition for the jacket. So one of the things you look up in your reference book, but you find out how many books are listed on the flap of the jacket. So I look at this jacket and I see that there's 31 books in the list. The book tells me there's supposed to be 14. So I know this is not a first. Usually, not always, there's not too many absolute rules in books, but usually on that list it should end with the book you're holding. Because if it's a list of books in sequence, then if that list ended with the Royal Book of Oz, I would guess that it might be a first edition. I'd look it up and I'd find out that's exactly correct. It is a first edition. The real home run in Oz books is something signed by L. Frank Baum. If you got a signed book, it's just super valuable, and it's a real keeper. There's other miscellany about Oz books, like in 1920, the publisher said every Oz book would come with a map of Oz. It's a little four-fold color map. I think it sells for $40 or $50 typically. And some people really like to collect these ancillary things. There was a time when Jello printed some little paperback Oz books and gave them as premiums with Jello. Some of that stuff is very collectible. But one thing that surprises me is after L. Frank Baum died, the first person to start writing Oz books was Ruth Plumley Thompson. And I would think, well, those books are less valuable. But in my experience, they don't seem to be less valuable. The value seems to go with the times. If a book was published when Oz books were popular, then the first print run was big. That means they're not scarce today, they're less valuable. If the book was published at a time that Oz books were less valuable, the first print run was small, and that book is scarce today and more valuable. So that's one of the things. Of course, there's no way to know that when you're out looking at books. If you want additional information, there's a website. I don't know this person, or I don't know much about them, but the website looks interesting, and there's a lot of information. It's called rareozbook.com, and you might try looking at it and seeing if you get some help from that. So that's it for Oz Books. We're going to try to do these about once a week, typically on Tuesdays. They'll be 24 hours on Periscope, and then we will put them on YouTube. So look for them and watch them. I think on Periscope you can subscribe to us, and I think on YouTube you can subscribe. So either way, I hope you'll watch for them. The next one we do will be on 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and it'll be next Tuesday. So we are ShelleyandSonBooks.com. If you want to email us, it's ShelleyandSonBooks.com at Gmail. No, excuse me. Email is ShelleyandSonBooks at gmail.com. Excuse me. See you next time.